This video will walk us through a few precipitation reactions and how we can predict the products and how we can identify the precipitate, identify what is soluble and insoluble. So remember, the first thing we want to do, these are all aqueous to start, right? So that means that they are going to dissociate in solution. So if it helps, you can go ahead and write out those ions. Remember, you can get the charges from your purple sheet or from the periodic table. So if I want to predict my products, remember, I'm just going to flip-flop the first two things. So instead of starting with silver, I'm going to start with sodium. That'll be bonded to NO3. And since they're both +1 -1, the charges cancel out. And now silver is going to kind of, remember, flip around to the other side as well. So we end up with AgCl. And those are both 1 + 1 -, so everything is 1 and 1. They cancel out. So this is sodium nitrate, and this is silver chloride. So I'm going to look at my solubility rules to decide which one is going to be soluble. Sorry. So nitrates are soluble. Okay, so I know that's going to get an AQ. Okay, and then chlorides are soluble except silver, mercury, and lead. So because I have silver chloride, Ag chloride, that's going to be insoluble. So I'm going to go back to my sheet here, and I'm going to give my nitrate an AQ, and then my silver chloride an S, okay, because that is insoluble. So let's look at the next question. So I have my ions, and again, remember, I'm getting these charges from the back of the periodic table or from the purple sheet. Okay, so those are just +1 -1. And then I'm just going to flip-flop the first two, right? So instead of sodium, I'm going to start with barium. Barium is a 2+, sulfate is a 2-, so those 2 and 2, they're just going to cancel out. Okay, and then remember, my sodium's also swapping places, so now I have sodium and then chloride. So 1+, 1-, those are also going to cancel out. So now I'm ready to look for my solubility. So this is a sulfate and this is a chloride. So I'm going to find my rules on sulfates and chlorides, and I'll try to erase this other stuff so it's not confusing. So here's sulfates. It says sulfates are soluble except barium. Okay, so my first one is insoluble. So we can go ahead and add that. Okay, so this would be insoluble. And then if you look at your rules, rule number 1 talks about sodium, group 1. Sodium's always soluble, so it gets the AQ. Okay, so now I can look at the next one. Again, I'm just going to write out my ions. That way I know my charges. And then I just have to flip-flop the first two. So you can try this one on your own if you'd like. Sorry. Try this one on your own if you'd like to. So my potassium's going to come over here with my chlorine. And again, these are both 1 + 1-, so no crisscrossing has to be done. My sodium's going to crisscross, or going to flip-flop over. And again, these are all 1 + 1-, so there's no little numbers, no crisscrossing. Everything cancels out. Now I can just go and look at my solubility rules. So this is a potassium chloride and a sodium nitrate. So potassium and sodium nitrates, right? These fall under my first two rules. They're always soluble. So on my answer sheet, I'm going to put AQ, because they're both soluble. So in reality, we would see all of these, right, as still being dissociated, still floating around in solution. And so we can also say no reaction for this because we wouldn't actually see any solid being formed. So you're predicting your products to kind of justify why there is no reaction. There's no reaction because the two products I'm going to form are soluble. Okay, so last one, I'm just going to again write out my charges, my ions, using my periodic table to tell me my charges. Then I can flip-flop. Okay, so again, if you can try this one on your own. So magnesium is going to come over here to the front. It's a 2 plus, sulfur is a 2 minus, so when I crisscross, they're going to cancel out. So I'm just going to rewrite it. And then now my sodium moves over, swaps places with magnesium. So we end up with NaCl. Again, that 1 plus, 1 minus charge, so they cancel out. Now I can look at my solubility. So I have a sulfide and I have a chloride. I know this is not a sulfate like it was up here with number 2. This is a sulfate because SO4 is on our polyatomic sheet. If it ends in 8 or ite, right, multiple elements, that's going to be a polyatomic. So this is just sulfur, so we're just looking for rules on sulfides. So number 6, sulfides are insoluble. There's some exceptions here, but I don't have an exception. So it is, magnesium is not one of those. So that is going to be our insoluble compound. And then just like we've kind of previously determined, all sodiums are soluble, so they get the AQ.